Welcome to Yoga Sequencing for Beginners. This is a series to give you examples of some of my sequencing methods, and today I'm going through what I call a ladder flow. My name is Ashley and I specialize in helping new yoga teachers and yoga practitioners create their own unique yoga sequences in a very simple and effective way. If you haven't checked out my 10 steps to sequencing a yoga class video, it's a pretty good one. I would recommend checking it out, but I did make that about 4 years ago. So now I'm just expanding on that and giving you a few more methods within that 10-step framework. And this one is called ladder flow. You can actually find more about all of my methods and my sequencing tips and tricks in my online workshop called Focused Flow. All of my links and things will be down in the description, so you can check it out there. But let's get to an example of what is a ladder flow and how can you create your own. I wrote this example out here. It's a very simple ladder flow sequence. I've got 5 poses that make the base. Every yoga class or fitness class really has this bell-shaped curve. It starts with a warm-up, and then there's a middle section, which is like the work portion, and then there's the cool down as you head down to relaxation. So that's pretty much the same for every fitness class. There might be little variations here, little bumps along the way, but for the most part, warm up, build your way up, and then you come back down. So I want to focus in this ladder flow on 5 or 6, I've got 5 here, poses that make up that middle section. So these 5 poses build on each other. More challenging as you walk up that ladder. My sequence goes like this: Crescent Lunge, Warrior 3, Warrior 2, Side Angle, Bird of Paradise. And you'll also notice something about that sequence is that I've grouped together the internally rotated hip lunges and the externally rotated hip lunges. Crescent Lunge and Warrior 3 have the same internally rotated back leg. Warrior 2, Side Angle, and the Bird of Paradise all have the externally rotated back leg. It would be really awkward to go from Crescent Lunge, Warrior 2, Warrior 3, Side Angle. It's just a lot of turning in the hips. So if we can minimize that and group like poses together, so that's how we create smooth transitions from pose to pose. Now with these 5 poses, that's going to make up the base. My warm-up and my cool down pretty much stay the same class to class. You don't have to get extra fancy or creative here. If you're just getting started, keep it simple. So what I have for the beginning is a very power yoga friendly warm-up or initial pose and practice. We start in child's pose. Another reason I like starting in child's pose with Bird of Paradise being our biggest pose is that we want to start by opening the hips. So I think about, okay, Bird of Paradise, we need hips open. I should either start seated or in a child's pose. So child's pose it is. From child's pose, shift forward, cat and cow. So then we start to get the spine activated. And you can actually do other kinds of warm-ups if you would like. From cat and cow, walk the hands a little forward, tuck the toes under, down dog just for about a breath or so. Maybe pedal the feet a second or two, and then we walk forward. The first time I come up to standing, I always roll up. So it's a slow rise to standing. Now you might add something here, a little grounding and tension, mountain pose, it's your base, that kind of thing. But then from there going into sun salutations. On my flow here, I just said we'll do sun salutation A 3 times. Because I'm doing so many lunges in the middle of our practice, I'm not going to get too much into sun salutation B's, which add lunges, so that's just too many. I'll just walk through it one time so you know what I'm talking about. Palms forward, reach up, inhale, exhale, forward fold, lengthen, inhale, exhale, you can step or jump back. And I'm power yoga focused, so I always add an extra breath here to shift forward and then bend the elbows. And you will have different variations of that. You might lower to your belly, up dog or cobra pose, downward facing dog. Now it's up to you if you want to hold a few breaths here. I usually like to do that. Then from there, bend the knees, look forward, exhale, step or hop to the top, half lift, forward fold, inhale, rise up. When I'm teaching beginners, I typically go through the first sun salutation A slowly. We add a few more breaths and I talk about each pose. The second time and third time through, we go a little faster. So after that, we're getting right into that middle section. So that was our warm-up. The middle section, you can either just step right on back. That's a great way to do this with beginners, so you're not constantly going through the endurance building of the vinyasa or that sun salutation. If I'm teaching a vinyasa or power class, my students are used to it wanting that challenge, we would go through the sun salutation highway. The same thing I just did. And then we step forward from here. You might lift the leg first, bend the knee, step forward, talk through that. The first pose is Crescent Lunge. So pose number 1, Crescent Lunge. Now a couple things you could do here. You could add movement if you're into it, like an up and down motion. We could just simply hold. You can add an arm variation or just stay where you're at, reaching and talking about Crescent Lunge. Very basic. It's wonderful. And then we do the other side. You're not just gonna step, step, switch. That's awkward. So instead, we're going to take the hands down. Now you can step forward into your fold and then step back if you're avoiding weight on the hands or adding that vinyasa, step back. So it's up to you what you do in between, but make it smooth, smooth transitions. So no awkward steps. We want it to feel like we're flowing with that breath. So we reach up, Crescent Lunge, and you would hold this one. And the next few, I'm not going to hold as long or go on both sides. I'm just going to give you an example of what we're doing next. So after that, we come down, we do it again. You might go straight to down dog. Again, the in-between, just find a transition that works for your students. Might be just simply stepping back to down dog, avoiding the push-ups. Or we step forward, step back. Ladder number 2, step number 2. We first hit up our lunge at the same pose we started in. That's number 1. And on the exhale, we rise right away. Transition. Balancing on carpet is hard. Here we go. Warrior 3. And hold this for a while. Same thing. We could add movement here or just stay and hold. And you'll want to go back to your lunge in order to transition. You always want that base pose, either the lunge or warrior 2, to transition back down and through. And we do the other side. 1, 2. Crescent Lunge, warrior 3. Good, and we hold, take it back down. And then I'm just going to get into the other poses. So then we lift, we step forward, Crescent Lunge, first go through warrior 3, right? And then you have to step back, Crescent Lunge, then back heel spins down, open up the hips. Now we're into our externally rotated poses. This hip that's open. The back heel stays the farthest point back. We want to avoid the toes turning out. Roll that back thigh in, but open the hip. Press through the pinky toe. See, these are all alignment cues. Now I'm getting into yoga teacher mode. As with all the poses, we hold a while, feel, squeeze the legs, talk about it. And then instead of coming back to Crescent Lunge, here we can actually reach forward, hands come down to the floor, a windmill effect, lift the back heel, and plant the hands down. You'd step forward or step back through that transition and do the other side. Now I'm going to pause here because I also want to tell you, as you do this ladder, right, you're going 1, 2, 3, we've got 2 more poses left. If you would like to add something in between, let's say you want a little core work, just a little extra pop of pizzazz, you can do that in between the poses. Let's say between poses 3 and 4 would be a great time. So we went through warrior 2, maybe right now we're going to be doing some like knee to elbow type of work, just to get a little bit more core activation. Or figure 8s, lift a leg, hold. Plank is a great foundational pose for building strength in pretty much the entire body. Okay, so we're going into the next pose. Lift the leg, step, right? Pose 1, Crescent Lunge. Pose 2, Warrior 3. Pose 3, Warrior 2. Now pose 4, leaning forward. We've got the same externally rotated hip, side angle, giving options or variations. Elbow can be on the thigh, hand can come down low. And before you come back down to the ground, you're not just going to hands down. Well, you could, but sometimes it's a little awkward. We can come back up first and then down to the floor. Back heel lifts and then switch sides, okay? So you get the gist of it, right? So the fifth round, we do the final pose. Lift the leg, exhale, step forward, crescent lunge, warrior three, exhale, inhale, crescent lunge. You might have to add some extra breaths here. Exhale, warrior two, adjust, inhale, lean forward, exhale, side angle. And you can give the option here just for the bind. So especially these bigger poses, you don't have to do, no one has to do the full variation. And this bind might be a bit much. Look down, step forward, and give the option to lift into bird of paradise. And come back down, open up, lift back to warrior two, hands to the ground, step back, go through your vinyasa flow. Now after you completed all 5 poses, step by step, and you hold each one as you progress, you can flow through each of that like 1 or 2 times again without the holds. So it's breath based, so you have to control the breath with it. Let's try it. Inhale, lift the leg. Exhale, step forward. Pose number 1, crescent lunge. Pose number 2, warrior 3, exhale. Pose number 3, warrior 2. Inhale first to crescent lunge. Exhale, open to warrior 2. Inhale, lean forward. Exhale, side angle. Let's bind the hands and open back up. So I'm not going to flow through that bird of paradise. I'm really just going to keep, just maybe it's a bind, and then we're open, back up, inhale, exhale, hands to the floor, step back. After you flow as many times as you want through your 5 poses, we're then coming down to our cool down. And the cool down, this can be very similar for every class, from class to class as well. If you want to add anything extra, any extra core work, cool, awesome. As long as you know the basics and keeping people safe, you're in a good place. One of the best things that would feel good though is a hip stretch of some kind. So I have on mine, after we finish, I'm doing pigeon pose, because we've been opening in a different way. This would feel so good. So we've got pigeon pose. We'll rest here for a little while. And I like doing pigeon pose directly from right to left side, so you don't feel super uneven and have to go through this long flow or long sequence before you get to pigeon on the other side. So then we step back after a few breaths and do the other side. And then from there, give it that little shake out, right? And then we sit down. And the cool down, or as I come down, is going to be seated poses and reclined poses, and then we're done. So here, after pigeon, I've got forward fold, a bound angle, could be nice, and then a regular, let's go, seated twist. So we haven't done really many twists here, so I'm trying to think in my mind, what have we not done a whole lot of, or what would complement what we just did? So we did a forward fold, we did another fold here, so a twist to lengthen that spine, and we haven't done a lot of twists, so I do a simple seated twist, side to side, and these you can hold, let's say, for 3 to 5 breaths, or even more if you wanted to. These ones don't have any ladder type flow, it's just, a cool down. So after those twists, I actually have on here boat pose. I mean, sure, why not? Add a little core strength. As you go through this, if you practice it yourself real quick, like your hour-long sequence, just go through it and flow through it like in 10-15 minutes, you'll start to notice what you want to add or delete. And then we're rolling down. And then I keep it really basic at the ground. Bridge pose, legs up the wall, another spinal twist, a relaxed spinal twist left and right, hug the knees, grab the feet, happy baby pose, and then Shavasana. That's it. Each of those, of course, you're going to hold a little while, and then we roll up or roll to your side, sit up, and finish our practice. So that was a ladder flow. It's really picking 5 or 6 poses and continuing to build on each of them. Your classes don't have to be ultra creative. And the truth is, you are probably going to get bored of your classes or your music selection long before your students ever do. It's actually really great to keep a little bit of consistency so that your students know what to expect when they come to your class. All right, I hope that was helpful. I would love to hear about your ladder flow. What would be your 4, 5, or 6 poses that you would put into the middle of your classes? Put that in the comment below and make sure that you stay tuned for next week's video because I'm going through this same flow in the method that I call a wave flow. So it will be slightly different, but the same poses. So this is a way you can change up your class without actually changing up the poses that you do. You're just changing up the middle flow style. So I can't wait to see you next video. Also, don't forget to give this a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and stay tuned for more yoga sequencing and yoga teaching tips.